Walaikum salam. Where you been, man? What happened?
Very busy.
Busy?
Yeah.
Mashallah.
Told me there was like some weather out. I'm not going to come. So that way.
Okay. You guys can write what's on the board, inshallah. We'll continue in our class on obstacles in the path of servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That in our journey to become better servants of Allah, there are certain obstacles that we are confronted with. We have now arrived at obstacle number 6, which is trials and tribulations. Trials and tribulations. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. First of all, what do I mean when I say trials and tribulations? And once we identify what trials and tribulations are, how do these things obstruct, or how do these things represent an obstacle in a person's desire to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What is a trial and tribulation?
A trial is a test.
A trial is a test. What kind of test? Like an exam, you sit down with a paper in front of you, ABC, circle the right answer. What kind of trial? What do we mean when we say trial or test?
Well, technically, your whole life is a test, so you have to do good things in the name of.
But you still didn't tell me what the test is. Yes, your whole life is a test, but you still didn't tell me what the test is. What is a test?
A test is something that has a. Well, I can't really explain it, but
If you can't explain it, you don't understand it. If you can't explain it, you don't understand it. When you understand something, you can articulate it. You can explain it very well. When you don't understand something, you're fumbling over your words. You can't, put it in the proper words. You can't, you can't get it out because it's not, you haven't fully grasped. You haven't fully grasped it. Yes.
It's like a measurement of aptitude, maybe.
Ah, there you go. Did you hear what he just said? A measurement of aptitude. Allahu Akbar. Somebody's wheels are spinning. You came back strong. You were absent for a couple of weeks, and you come back strong. Say it again. It's a measurement. A test is a measurement. Write that down. Since you don't have anything to write with, skull note it. You know what a skull note is?
I know. I can keep stuff.
A skull note. Thanks to Iceberg Slim. You guys will probably never, ever, ever know who that is. Nonetheless, Iceberg Slim is the first person that I've ever heard or I've ever read say, make a skull note of it. And that means that when you don't have anything to write, you write it here in your brain and you don't forget it. All right? A measurement. A test is a measurement to measure your aptitude, your ability. Right? So when we say life trials and tribulations are an obstacle in you getting closer to Allah, or you becoming, more of a servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's our life journey. That's what we're put here to do, is to be servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So our entire life is this path, right? Is this path to becoming the best servant that we can possibly be. Right? Some people fail miserably at this because they either don't understand what their path is, they don't understand what their purpose is. So obviously, if you don't plan, right, to not fail, then you're planning to fail. Right? So some people don't even know why they're here. People ask the question. I was actually one of those people who had the question, why am I here? What is my purpose here? Why am I here? I don't even understand why I was created. So you have some people who are roaming the earth right now who don't have a clue why they're here. All right? And then there are those of us who Allah has enlightened, those of us who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed with the ability to figure out very early in our lives, why am I here? Right? What is my purpose here? And the Quran tells us very, very specifically what our purpose is here, and that is to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship Him. Our entire life is a journey, is a path to becoming better servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So trial and tribulation sometimes can be an obstacle in that path, right? And as he said, that a test is a measurement of your aptitude, your ability. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us tests in life, these tests are not designed to break us. These tests are not designed, right, to, somehow make us appear a failure, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already knows what our capabilities are. However, these tests serve a greater purpose. And we're going to find out what that purpose is, inshallah. All right. So now that we've identified what a test is, we've identified what the test is. Now what we want to do is we want to look at how tests in life obstruct your ability to become a better servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Tumultuous times can have a negative impact on our journey towards being better servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you go through difficult times in your life, it can affect your ability to be a better servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one of the reasons why Allah does not test us with more than what we can handle. All right? I wrote here some points underneath this. Number one, Allah does not test you with more than what you can handle. Even though at the time you are being tested, you believe, I can't make it through this. This is way too much for me. I'm not going to make it through this. All right? Any one of you have experienced some hardship, difficulty in your life, the loss of a loved one, death of a family member, and you're saying to yourself, I don't even know how I'm going to make it through this. Right? The loss of a job. Well, you guys don't have jobs, but you will at some point. And you might lose your job. You might get fired. You might have to quit. You might be forced to quit. And then you're saying, okay, I got all of these bills. How in the world am I going to make it through this? Right? Some people go through a divorce. Right? They've been married to someone for a substantial amount of time. And then they say to themselves, how in the world? I don't know what life is like without this person in my life. I've been married to this person for so long. I don't even know how to function in life without this person in my life. I don't even know how I'm going to make it through this. But with each and every trial that Allah gives us, it is not above our capacity or our ability to bear. Allah says in the Quran in two places. One, Allah says, "La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha." Right? That Allah does not burden a soul more than what it can handle. This is a promise from Allah that He does not give you, any individual, more than what they can handle. Even though at the time that we're being tested with something, we think that this is the end of the world. There's no way I'm going to make it through this. This is far beyond my ability, right, to handle. Right? Why do you think when a person is tested, they think they see the trial or they see the test more than what they can handle? Why do people see their tests to be larger than their capacity to bear?
Maybe the shaitan makes it seem like, harder than it is really.
Demonic influence. He said perhaps shaitan makes the person believe that the trial or the test is bigger than what they can handle. Why else?
Or maybe it's because of some people who just want to ruin your life for whatever reason. Maybe they're jealous of you or anything, because I've been in some occasions.
No, I'm not talking about people. I mean, a trial or test could be a person. I'm just talking about events. I'm talking about events that happen to you in your life, and at the time that it's happening, you think that this is more than what you can handle, and you believe that you are going to, you're not going to make it out of this situation. Why do people think that their trials or their tests are more than what they can handle? Even though Allah says, I do not burden a soul with more than it can handle. He says shaitan. Shaitan makes you see the situation to be larger than what it really is.
Lack of experience, right?
So this is a new experience. You've never experienced this before. And quite naturally, when you experience something for the first time, you pretty much over-exaggerate it. You think it's more than what it really is. I'll give you an example. Have you ever traveled somewhere, right, and you have to use your GPS? So been traveling with your parents, you have to use your GPS. Those of you who are adults that are listening, pay attention. If you're traveling somewhere and you're using your GPS, you've never been there before, right? It seems like it takes a lifetime to get there, right? It seems like it's very long getting there. But when you get to your destination and then you're on your way back, why does it always seem like going back is quicker than it was getting there? Because you know your way back. You know where you're going and you know how long it takes to get home. When you're going to your destination that you've never been to before, you've never been there. So the experience is kind of exaggerated. It seemed like this longer. And in fact, the trip was not longer. Your anticipation made it, your lack of experience made the situation made the distance look further than what it really was. But if you go back to that place again and you know your way, it doesn't seem like it's that long, right? When you go back a second time, you say, wow, it wasn't that long. Well, why did it seem like it was so long the first time you went? Because it was a new experience. You never experienced it before. So human beings, we have this ability to exaggerate things when we experience it the first time, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he passed by a woman one time who was crying at the grave of her child. Her son died, and she was crying. And the Prophet walked behind her, and he said to her, Isbiri wahtasibi. Right? He said, be patient and desire your reward from Allah. The woman, without turning around, she didn't know it was the Prophet ﷺ. She said, إِلَيْكَ عَنِّي فَإِنَّكَ لَمْ تُصَبْ مَا أَصَابَنِي. She said, get away from me, because you haven't been tested with what I've been tested with. Right? Because when a person is, consumed by a trial or tribulation in life, they tend to think that there's no one else that is experienced or experiencing what they are going through at that moment. Right? Sometimes we might say to our parents, you don't know what I'm going through. Right? And the fact of the matter is that your parents might have possibly gone through what you've went through, right? Multiple times over. Right? You don't understand me. Right? You grew up in a different time. Right? Even though we grow up in a different time, it doesn't mean the experience is still the same. The experience is still the same. It's a different time. You don't understand. I do understand. Trust me. I may not understand your particular experience, but I've been through a similar experience. But when a person is going through something at that moment, they tend to think that no one else has gone through what they're going through, and that situation is something that they are not going to be able to make it through. And I want us to understand, what we do to ourselves, the anxiety, the psychological trauma that we cause to ourselves, right? Sometimes we fail Allah's tests, not because it was more than what we can handle, but because we lacked confidence in our own ability, right? Because you don't really know who you are until you're tested, right? You don't know your aptitude, right? Until it is measured, until it is tested, all right? So a lot of times when we go through things, we make it seem like it's more than what it really is, when in fact, Allah has promised us that He would never give us a test that was beyond our capacity, whether morally, physically, psychologically. Allah is not going to give you more than what you can handle. You have a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So Allah says in this ayah, in the last ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا, that Allah does not burden a soul more than what it can bear. And another ayah in Surah Al-Talaq, in the Surah of divorce, and it's It's not a coincidence that this ayat would end up in the surah on the chapter of divorce. Divorce is by far one of the most difficult tests that any man or woman could possibly be tested with. And I pray that none of you ever have to experience that. By far one of the most difficult tests that anybody could be put through. All right? It tests the moral fabric of your worth, your self-worth, your value. Right? Going through a situation like that, you start to feel like I'm worthless. I'm not even worth anything. Especially if the divorce occurred for something that was very, infinitesimal. Right? It was so small. It was something that was not even necessary. Nonetheless, Allah says in this ayat, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا ما آتاها وسيجعل الله بعد عسر يسرا. That Allah does not burden a soul with more than He has given it the capacity to bear. Meaning, if you can handle a trial or a test, it's because Allah has given you the aptitude or has given you the fortitude to endure. That came from Allah, not from you. Allah tests you with something. He tests you according to the fortitude that He has given you. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا ما آتاها. He does not burden a soul with more than He has given it the capacity to bear. وَسَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ عُسْرِ يُسْرًا. And Allah will make after difficulty ease. Showing you that although the trial that you're going through, that will eventually subside and things will get easier. So if you guys that are listening are going through something in your life right now, it's only periodic. It's only temporary. Eventually, there will come a period of ease where that which you are experiencing will eventually go away. It may not go away completely, but the intensity of it will begin to diminish, right? And you'll begin to breathe and you'll begin to, enjoy life or bring some normalcy back to your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows us better than we know ourselves. Do you guys agree? Do you think Allah knows us better than we know ourselves? Right. Allah says in the Quran, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ لَطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Shouldn't He know better who created you? Meaning, shouldn't Allah know you better than you know yourself? And He's the one that created you. وَهُوَ لَطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. And He is the subtle and the all-aware. Allah knows you better than you know yourself. So when Allah gives you your test, He's giving you your test based upon His knowledge of your fortitude, your ability to endure, your endurance, as well as how this test is going to benefit you in your life. Because Allah knows what's best for you, more than you know for yourself. We may think, why is Allah testing me with this? I don't deserve this. Not right now in my life. I don't want to deal with this right now in my life. Why is this happening at this particular time in my life? But Allah knows you better than you know yourself. Allah knows you better than you know yourself. Right? Which is why when we see the trial coming towards us, we try to circumvent the tests. We try to do things to get us out of it. We lose a job, and then we go borrow money, and we go, take a loan. We go into debt, further, exacerbating our test, instead of just allowing the chips to fall where they may, and just accepting that this is the hand that Allah dealt me. Right? This is what it is. All right? But we study trying to circumvent and go around and avoid, not realizing that everything that you are trying to avoid has already been predetermined for you 50,000 years before Allah brought you into existence. The first thing that Allah created was what? What was the first thing that Allah created?
The angels.
Huh?
The angels.
The angels? No. The first thing that Allah created. You don't know? You're going to learn today. The first thing that Allah created was what?
The universe.
The universe? No. Before that.
The heavens.
The heavens? Nope. Before that.
His throne.
The first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created was this thing right here. Not the marker. The pen. this tool right here, this thing that we consider so insignificant. You find pencils on the floor. I need a pen. I need a pencil. Let me sharpen my pencil. We don't realize how powerful a tool to write with is. A pen can be the difference between your life or your death. Right? You go in front of a judge signs an order for you to spend the rest of your life in prison or for you to go home from prison is with the pen, a stroke of a pen. You go to child support, women who want to take their husbands to court for the children. And with a stroke of a pen, a judge can decide whether your children are taken away from you or your children are given to you. Pen is very powerful. Pen is very powerful. Has the ability to change lives with this thing right here. When you get paid as a worker, an employee, right? You get paid by the stroke of your boss's pen to write the check. You understand? Very powerful. A pen, very powerful. And we take it for granted, right? As students, you guys always, looking around for a pencil, right? Back in the day when we were kids, we used to go in the bathroom and we used to do what is called pencil fight. I don't know if you guys do that anymore. You guys do that in high school? Y'all don't go in the bathroom and pencil fight? Oh my gosh. What in the world does high school become? You guys don't even know how to pencil fight. The pencil fight is where you hold the pencil like this. I take my pencil and I go like this and I try to break your pencil. So back in the day, a teacher would bust in the boys' bathroom and find broken pencils all over the floor. Literally, there was a pencil deficit in my middle school, right? For those of you from the East Orange, New Jersey area, I went to Hart Middle, Sojourner Truth, Hart Middle School. I was in Building B. Right? We had 3 buildings, A building, B building, and C building. Because of where I lived at in East Orange, I had to go to B building, right? Which is probably the second toughest building out of all of the 3 buildings. All right? The thing is that in that building, there was a pencil deficit. Meaning, you're constantly borrowing pencils from people to go in the bathroom and pencil fight. And then when we couldn't find pencils, we used to use the plastic forks, spoon forks, that you get from lunch, right? And we used to break the teeth off of the forks. We would find anything to fight with, right? Just boys. The point that I'm making is that we took pencils and pens, tools for articulation, we took it for granted. And, here I am today, an author, right? Go figure. Who would have ever thought that I would become an author? The person who took the tool for articulation for granted. And years later in my own life, I'm a teacher and an author, right? It's funny how life just turns out. But nonetheless, the first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created was the pen. And Allah told the pen, uktub, write. The pen said to Allah, and I know it seems strange that a pen talks, but today we have watches, right, that have Siri on the watch, that your watch can talk to you. So it's not strange that a pen can talk. Centuries later, man has been given the technological advancement of creating a pen that can actually talk. You understand? So when we read hadith like this and we say that the first thing Allah created was a pen, Allah told the pen to write, and then the pen turned to Allah and said, what shall I write? Sometimes we read these narrations and we're saying like this, it almost seems like, it was just like a storybook, a fable, right, if you will, that there's no way that something like this could happen. But when you think about it, the deeper implications of the technological advancements that we have today that we enjoy, I can talk to my phone right now. If I called Siri's name right now on both of my phones, she would respond back to me. Literally. And that's a phone, a device that can speak to you. There are people who have the Siri thing, Alexa, whatever, hooked up into their homes, where they can walk into their houses and begin speaking to this particular device in their homes to turn on the heat to a certain degree, right? They now have refrigerators that you can communicate with from your office. You can actually see what is in your refrigerator from your smartphone. Who granted man, the intellectual prowess to, to develop something like this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if Allah says that the first thing that he created was the pen, and he told the pen to write, and the pen said, what shall I write? فَلَيْسَ بِمُسْتَغْرَبٍ. It's not something that we should be amazed with, considering the technology that we enjoy today. You guys follow me? So anytime you read hadith like that, always reference that to the time that we live in. And it should not be amazing to be able to understand that. All right? And Allah told the pen to write. The pen said, what shall I write? ماذا أكتب? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أكتب ما كل ما هو كائن إلى يوم القيامة. Write everything that is to take place on earth until the day of judgment. That means that every test, every trial that comes to you in your life was hand-selected for you by the one who created you and know you better than you know yourself 50,000 years before you were even thought of. You follow me? There is no escaping the test that Allah has for you. And even if something misses you, Allah decides to have mercy on you, right? Because some tests can miss you. How? Because maybe you made dua. You saw a test coming, or you were being proactive and you made dua, oh Allah, don't test me with this. And Allah didn't test you with that. It missed you. But something else hit you. Right? As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, فَإِنْ أَخْطَأَهُ هَذَا نَشَهَهُ هَذَا وَإِنْ أَخْطَأَهُ هَذَا نَشَهَهُ هَذَا. If this one misses you, this one is going to hit you. And if this one misses you, then this one is going to hit you. And the scholars, they explain, how does a test miss you? How does a test miss you? Maybe you made dua. Maybe Allah decided to have mercy upon you. Right? And not test you with this, but he tested you with something of a lesser magnitude. But nonetheless, there is no escaping. The test will continue to repeat itself over and over again until you learn your lesson. You follow me? The test will continue to repeat itself over and over again until you learn your lesson. And eventually, as you get older, you start to realize that I've been tested with this multiple times. Obviously, there's a lesson in this that I'm supposed to learn. All right? And you figure it out. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows our level of endurance, so he gives us just enough to keep us humble along our journey. All right? Allah doesn't test you with more than what you can handle. He gives you just enough, right, to humble you along your journey. Because part of being a good servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being humble. Right? Is being humble. And one of the ways that Allah humbles us is by testing us. Sometimes we're very boastful, arrogant. We think we got it all figured out. We think we understand the world that's in front of us, right? And then we are tested with something, and then we come to the realization, I don't know jack. And I appreciate Allah testing me with this because it humbled me. And you will have some life lessons, some life tests and trials that will humble you, right? They will humble you, without a doubt. When you look at the prophets and messengers, right? As the Prophet ﷺ, we covered the hadith before, he said that when Allah made him an offer, that I would give you a valley in Mecca filled with gold. Right? You remember that hadith? What did the Prophet say?
That he wanted the regular human experience?
He said, no. Allah said, if you wish, I'll give you a valley in Mecca filled with gold. From top to bottom. The Prophet ﷺ said, La ya Rabbi. No. I would rather just have a normal human experience. He said, the days that I have, then I will be grateful to you. He said, وَإِذَا جِعْتُ تَضَرَّعْتُ إِلَيْكَ وَدَعَوْتُكَ. He said, and the days that I don't have, that I'm hungry, the days that I don't have, I'll humble myself to you and I'll call on you, because that's what not having does to you. It humbles you, right? Being tested. He said, on the days that I have, the days that I do have, I'll show my gratitude to you. And on the days that I don't have, I'll humble myself to you and I'll call on you, because that's what trials and tests are designed to do, to humble you. But there's some people who are tested and they come out of the test even more arrogant, believing that, yeah, I made it through that. That was really nothing, right? You ever see somebody go through something and then after it's over, instead of humbling themselves, they become even more arrogant, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described to us people who call on him, right? They're going through something, they call on Allah, and then when Allah gives them some alleviation from the pain, all right, they move on about their lives as if they never even made dua. Very arrogant. Nah, that was nothing. I made it through that. Knowing daggone well the whole time that you were going through it, right? You were suffering from anxiety, you were in fear, you didn't know, you couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But once it's over, it's like, yeah, I made it out of it. I handled that, right? Very arrogantly. But when we look at the prophets and messengers, all right, I want you guys to understand something. Because some people think that when Allah tests you, when Allah tests them, that is a sign that Allah doesn't love you. All right? Some people think that when Allah tests them, that is a sign that Allah doesn't love them. And the fact of the matter is that the prophets and messengers were the best of Allah's creation. However, they had the worst tests. So if Allah testing you is a sign that he doesn't love you, then what does that say about the prophets and messengers who were the best of Allah's creation and they had the worst tests? You understand? When Allah loves you, he tests you. Because the more you humble yourself, the more Allah raises you to him. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man tawada'a lillahi rafa'ahu Allah ta'ala." That whoever humbles himself before Allah, Allah will raise him in degrees. The more you humble yourself, the more Allah will raise you. So the more Allah tests you, the more you get humbled, and the more you get humbled, the more Allah raises you. Yes?
What do you mean by humbled? Like, you mean the people, like, to Allah, like, being very grateful to Allah, or like, around other people being humble? Like, what do you mean exactly by humbling yourself?
Both. Humbling yourself in front of Allah's creation and humbling yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To humility, that is the opposite of arrogance. Arrogance, to be boastful, to be prideful, to believe that, the world bows to your feet and that you have it all under control. And to be humble means to understand that in the grand scheme of it all, you're really nothing. You understand? To humble yourself, both before Allah's creation as well as in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's one of the great scholars of Islam. He said that when I leave out of my home, my day is in between four things. He said, I either meet someone who is more knowledgeable than me when I walk out of my door. He said, فَهَذَا يَوْمْ تَعْلِيمِ. That's the day that I learn. My day consists of four things. When I leave out of my home, I either run into somebody who is more knowledgeable than me, then that is the day that I become a student and I learn from that person. He said, I either leave out of my home and I run into someone who is more ignorant than me, and that day I become his teacher. Or I leave out of the home and I meet someone who is on an equal level with me, and that is the day that I humble myself. Right? That is the day I humble myself before the person, because I don't ever want to make myself seem like I'm better than anyone else. Right? And the more you have that mentality, the more Allah will raise you. Right? There's a very famous quote that says that the reason why rivers and lakes are able to dominate over oceans, bigger bodies of water, is because they remain underneath them, lower than them. All right? So that the wise man who seeks to put himself, who puts himself behind people, actually puts himself in front of them. And the wise man who seeks to put himself beneath people, they will actually raise him above them. And so therefore, his superiority is not felt. They don't feel the weight of his authority because he doesn't seek to put himself in front of people, or he doesn't seek to put himself above people. He allows people to do that. You understand? That's what it means to humble yourself. Right? And the more Allah tests you, the more humble you become. And the more humble you become, the higher Allah raises you in the sight of his creation, as well as with him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look at the prophets and messengers, we see men who were tested. All throughout the Quran, we read stories of these great men who had some of the greatest tests known to man. All right? Let's take a look at a couple of them. Let's take a look at Prophet Yunus, alayhi salam, who was probably one of the greatest tested prophets. What was Prophet Yunus's story? What happened to Prophet Yunus? He was given the nickname Dhunnun. Dhunnun, the companion of the whale.
He was the one who was engulfed by a whale or something, was eaten by a whale, and he lived in its belly.
He was swallowed by a whale. Can you imagine being swallowed by an animal? This huge animal that lives in the water. And this animal comes up and puts you in his mouth and swallows you. And Allah commanded the whale, as Allah commands his creation, right, not to rip his skin, not to chew up his bones, but to hold him right there in his stomach. Until when? Until when?
Multiple decades, I think.
No. Mm-mm. He stayed for a few days. But when did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decide to allow the whale to spit him out?
Oh, he spent a lot of time doing dua while he was stuck in his stomach.
When he made dua. When he made dua, what did he say in his dua that allowed the mouth of the whale to open to spit him out? He acknowledged that he was wrong. He acknowledged that he was wrong. Humility. That when you humble yourself, the tests will let up. You follow me? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَلَّا نَقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ. And Dhannun, the companion of the whale, when he walked off in anger, thinking that we did not have any control over him, right? This is the arrogance of man who believe that I am in control, right? And your tests bring you back to the reality that you are not in control, right? We walk off arrogantly. I'm leaving my family, or I'm leaving my wife, or I'm leaving my husband, I'm leaving my children, I'm leaving my job, I'm leaving my contract that I made with this person. Arrogantly walking away from your responsibility. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us time and time again that He is the one that is in control. You are not. وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَلَّا نَقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ. And remember Dhannun, the companion of the whale, when he walked away angry, in anger, thinking that we didn't have any control over him. We couldn't bring you back. And Allah commanded the whale to swallow him and hold him in this place, this dark place, until he realized that you are not in control and that you were wrong. Right? Think about the metaphor that's here. This is a real life event, but for us, we can apply this metaphor to our lives because trials and tribulations sometimes serve as our well, the well of Yunus. Sometimes you are in a dark place in your life, and that dark place in your life is synonymous with the well that swallowed Yunus. And as you guys get older, you will think about this metaphor. For those of you who are listening, who are adults, you should already understand the implications of this metaphor and what it means and what it represents. Sometimes we are in a dark place in our lives, and that dark place is not going to let up until you humble yourself. And it wasn't until Yunus made the dua, وَنَادَى فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ سُبْحَانَكَ إِنِّي كُنْتُ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And Yunus called out in the darkness of the belly of that well. He called out to Allah. La ilaha illa anta, nothing worthy of worship except you. Inni kuntu min al-zalimin, I was wrong. I was wrong. And a lot of times you'll realize when you go back and you apologize to someone or you just admit to yourself that you were wrong, don't you feel better? It's like a ton of bricks lifted off of you, right? That's half of your journey gone. Done. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said, لَوْلَا إِذْ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُسَبِّحِينَ لَلَبِثَ فِي بَطْنِهِ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. That if it was not for the fact that Yunus, prior to this, that he used to worship us, we would have made him remain in the belly of that well until the day of judgment. Allah could have made that happen. Right? Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْءٍ أَن يَقُولُ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونُ. That Allah's situation is such, God's situation is such, that when He decides something, He simply says to it, be, and it is. So if Allah wanted Yunus to remain in the belly of that well until the day of judgment, that could have been possible. But he did not become released from the belly of that well until he admitted his mistake, so he admitted his wrong, right, and humbled himself. All right, let's look at another example. Prophet Ayub, right? Prophet Ayub, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Anbiya, Surah number 21, ayah 83, right? What happened to Prophet Ayub? Anyone know what happened to him? Prophet Ayub was very handsome. He was wealthy, was rich. He had a lot of children, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him with all of that. He was no longer handsome, right? He was afflicted with a disease, right? That to some of the scholars say that his flesh began to fall off of his bones. Leprosy. He was afflicted with leprosy. When you get a chance, Google leprosy. And you can see the different levels of leprosy and how it affects. It's a skin disease. How do you go from being handsome, right, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testing you? And if you notice, Allah always tests you with what? Allah always tests you with what?
With nothing you can't handle.
Huh?
With nothing you can't handle.
In your own personal life, Allah tests you with what? He picks and chooses the things He's going to test you with.
You value?
The things that you value. Yes. The scholars, they say, "Man ahabba shay'in ibtuliya bi," that whoever loves something, Allah will test him with that thing. So be careful with the things that you allow your heart to become attached to. Your heart should be attached to what? Or who? Your hearts should only be attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your hearts should only be attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That doesn't mean that you can't love this person in your life, or to like a car, or like a pair of sneakers or shoes or whatever. That's not, but there's a difference between liking these things and allowing your heart to become attached to those things. Right? To the point where the Prophet ﷺ said, Ta'isa abdu dinar, ta'isa abdu dirham. May the worshipper of the dinar and the worshipper of the dirham, may he always find humiliation. Why did he call them the worshipper of the dinar? Basically the worshipper of money. Because of their love for it. Your love of a thing makes you a slave to it. You understand? And that could be a human being. That could be your spouse, right? That could be your wife, your husband. Severe love of a thing, right, will make you a worshiper of that thing. Right? So that way, that's why you always have to be moderate in your love of a person or your love of a thing. Because if you do not control the degree of love and attachment you have to a person or to a thing, it will make you a worshiper of that thing. Ibn al-Qayyim, great scholar of Islam, he said that whoever loves something more than Allah, he will be tested with that thing 3 times. Number 1, he will be tested before he gets it. Meaning the anxiety, the fear of not having it, the fear of not getting it. And then number 2, he'll be tested after he got it, and that is with the fear of losing it. Because you can't enjoy something if you're constantly in fear of losing it, right? You can't enjoy it. Because you're always worried about when this thing is no longer going to exist for you. When this person, if it is a person that you love severely, you're always worrying about when this person is going to leave you. Right? For those of you listening, very important. Sometimes we put so much attachment to people and things, and our fear of losing the thing overshadows our ability to enjoy it. And the third way you will be punished with it is by Allah stripping you of it, and then you have to deal with the pain that is associated with losing it. So whoever loves something or someone more than Allah will be tested with that thing 3 times. The first, you'll be tested before getting it, the fear of not having it, the fear of not getting it, right? The anxiety that's attached to it. And then, once you get it, you will be punished with it. And that is the fear of losing it, the fear of not having it. And then the third punishment is you will be tested, or you will be punished by the thing being taken away from you. And then you got to deal with the anxiety, the fear, and all of the psychological trauma that is associated with losing someone or something. Prophet Ayub, he was tested with his looks. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him with leprosy. Number 2, he was also tested with his children leaving him. And number 3, he was tested with him losing all of his money, his wealth. Test. Allah says in the Quran, وَأَيُّوبَ إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. SubhanAllah. I think one of the things that I'm going to do this Ramadan is to concentrate on all of the dua that the prophets and messengers have made that's in the Quran. Examine, a close examination of every single dua that the prophets and messengers have made in the Quran. And I'm sure that I can find 30 dua in the Quran made by the prophets and messengers, and there are 29 or 30 days in Ramadan. So every single day in Ramadan, we're going to cover a dua from the dua of the prophets and messengers in the Quran, so that we can understand, their plight. We can understand the pain that they were going through. We can understand the trials and tribulations that they were experiencing, right? So we can have that experience along with them, right? You can actually hear the pain in Ayub's voice. Allah said, وَأَيُّوبَ إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ. And remember or recall Ayub when he called out to his Lord. أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. I have been afflicted with calamity, with trial and tribulation. وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. And you are the most merciful of those who have mercy. Meaning, have mercy upon me, my Lord. I can't handle this. Right? Can you hear the pain in his voice? You can hear it. Even though you don't necessarily hear his voice, you can hear the pain in his voice. Right? He said that I've been afflicted with a calamity. وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ. And you are the most merciful of those who have mercy. Then Allah says, فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ. So we responded to him. فَكَشَفْنَا مَا بِهِ مِنْ دُرٍ. And we removed the calamity, we removed the trial that he was experiencing. Right? As Allah said in the ayah before, وَسَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ بَعْدَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Allah will make after difficulty ease. Allah tested him. But then he called on Allah, humbling himself, right? That was humility. He called on Allah. He said, I have been afflicted with a calamity, and you are the most merciful of those who have mercy. How is that humbling himself? How is that humility? Because he realized that he could not, by himself, remove the calamity that he was experiencing. He needed a power that was greater than himself. And that is man's greatest trial, because we always think that our resources, our money, our smarts, our intellectual prowess can always get us out of a situation. So it's very difficult for a human being to humble himself and realize that you are in over your head, and that the only way that you can get out of this situation is to call on a power greater than yourself. You understand? That takes humility. Usually, The human being believes that I have money, I have resources, I know people, I can network, and I can remove this situation from myself. But to turn to Allah, realizing that you have no one, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, I have no power, no might, no strength, none of my own to get me out of this situation except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That takes humility, man. That takes humility on another level. So Allah says, فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ, we responded to him. فَكَشَفْنَا مَا بِهِ مِنْ دُرٍ, and we removed the calamity that he was experiencing, right? And then he said, وَآتَيْنَاهُ وَأَهْلَهُ وَأَتَيْنَاهُ وَأَهْلَهُ وَمِثْلَهُمْ مَعَهُمْ. He said, we gave him back his family, right? We gave him back his family, right? And we gave him the like thereof, meaning we gave him friends and companions that would serve just like his family, right? Rahmatin min indina, out of mercy from us. وَذِكْرَى لِلْعَابِدِينَ. This is the most important part of the ayah. He said, as a reminder for those who serve me. As a reminder for those who serve me. وَذِكْرَى لِلْعَابِدِينَ. So for those of us on the path of servitude, this is a reminder to us. What happened to Ayub is a reminder. He said, رَحْمَةٍ مِّنْ عِنْدِنَا وَذِكْرَى لِلْعَابِدِينَ. As a mercy from us and a reminder to those who are on the path of servitude to me, who are serving me, who are worshiping me. You guys following me? Or am I putting you to sleep? All right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that's Ayub, that's Yunus. Of course, let's look at Prophet Musa alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what happened to Musa before he actually conquered Fir'aun? He went on a run. What was he in fear of? What was he afraid of? Death. From who? From what? What happened?
The soldiers of Fir'aun.
Huh?
The soldiers of the Pharaoh.
The soldiers of Fir'aun. Why was he running? What did he do? Why were they looking for him?
They spread the wrong message.
No, before he began preaching. Why were they looking for him? He killed someone, right? If anybody has ever been on a run, you ever been afraid for your life, running for your life, you know what that feels like. You don't feel comfortable anywhere. You have people looking for you, right? Musa's on the run.
Who did he kill?
He killed one of the Israelites, right? One of Pharaoh's people. He saw one of his people from his tribe fighting another guy from Fir'aun's tribe, and he went to go help him, punch the guy, and killed him. He didn't mean to kill him, but it happened. All right? So Fir'aun, the word got back to Fir'aun, so he sent his army to look for Fir'aun. Musa goes on the run. He leaves his home, right? Leaves his family, leaves his mother, leaves everybody. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so perfectly tested Musa with this because he took all of Musa's resources away from him. Here again for the second time. The first time was when he was an infant, when he was a baby, and his mother threw him in the river, right? He had nobody. But as an infant, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to take care of him. So as a child, you don't need to necessarily worry about Allah taking care of you because Allah will make sure that you have what you need. As an adult, thinking, conscious adult, now you have to actually put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Children don't necessarily understand trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but as adults, we have no other choice but to learn how to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was the second time Musa was without all of the resources that usually human beings will use to get them out of situations, right? His mother threw him as a baby into the Nile River. He's floating down the river, this infant in a basket with no resources other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promise to return him to his mother, right? Here we are again as an adult. Allah tested Musa again. He's on the run. He has no mother, no father, no siblings, nobody to help him. He's running for his life by himself. And on his way, he settles by a tree, out of breath, scared, scared for his life, don't have anything, no money, no food, no resources. And what does he do? He turns to a power greater than himself, realizing that all my resources are gone. Halaka anni sultaniya, as the disbelievers won't figure this out until the day of judgment, when they will say, Halaka anni sultaniya, all of my resources have left me, right? But the believer realizes, despite your resources, you are nothing without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing. So Musa, he settles by a tree and he calls on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. He said, oh my Lord, whatever you have decreed for me of good, I am in need of it right now. I'm in need of it. Look at my situation. I have nothing. All right, going back to the belief in the divine preordainment, that Musa himself understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala predetermines everything for everybody. So Musa called on Allah. He said, whatever you have prepared for me, whatever you have decreed for me to have of good, I'm in need of it right now. I need it now. I have nothing. Right? Rabbi lima inni lima anzalta ilayya min khayrin faqir. In Surah number 28, ayat 24. Surah Al-Qasas, ayat number 24. Musa said, oh my Lord, whatever you have written for me of good, I am in need of it right now. Right? And the scholars say that Musa, he called on Allah by circumstance, asking Allah to look at his situation and to help him based upon the situation that he was in, rather than just asking Allah for what he wanted. He could have said, oh Allah, send me provision. He could have said, oh Allah, send me protection. Oh Allah, he didn't ask for that. He didn't ask for anything specific. He asked Allah to look at his situation and to provide for him accordingly. Very powerful, man. These supplications, these dua, wallah al-azim, we need to really examine these dua, with such diqqah, with such precision, because there's so much wisdom in it. Inshallah ta'ala, about 9 o'clock, an hour is going by. So, inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here. And the thing about it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for you to call on him. Sometimes Allah tests us so we can call on him. Right? And the last ayah, I believe, is Surah Al-Furqan. قُلْ مَا يَعْبَأُ بِكُمْ رَبِّي لَوْلَا دُعَاؤُكُمْ فَقَدْ كَذَّبْتُمْ فَسَوْفَ يَكُونُ لِزَامًا. Allah says, and say, قُلْ مَا يَعْبَأُ بِكُمْ رَبِّي. Say, my Lord would not even pay attention to you. لَوْلَا دُعَاؤُكُمْ. Except for the fact that you call on him. Allah would not even pay attention to you, except for the fact that you call on him. You make dua. That is the only reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even pays us any attention. Because we call on him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Other than that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not even care about us. But the fact that we call on him, the fact that we call out to him for his help and his assistance, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves for us to call on him, and to call on him based upon recognizing our weaknesses. So when we talk about being tested, if being tested was a sign that Allah hates you, as that's a thought that Shaitan puts in our mind, if being tested is a sign that Allah hates you, then what do you say about the prophets and messengers, the best of Allah's creation, who had the worst tests? No, being tested is a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually loves you. So inshallah, we'll stop here, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. We'll continue next week with this particular obstacle. Do you guys have any questions? Any questions about this?
A little bit of something earlier when you said about how you're tested and things you care about and stuff, and if you really like it, you can't let your heart get attached to it and stuff.
Right.
How do you differentiate between just being really thankful and grateful for something and being too vested in it, really?
How do you differentiate between loving something and being grateful for that thing, and being too vested in that thing. All right, investing too much emotion in that thing. Good question. The fact of the matter is that showing gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what He has given